Glenn Greenwald, a journalist who I've always loved, has lobbed some accusations at the Intercept and has resigned his position as of yesterday over the fucking Hunter Biden laptop story. So he was on the Hill, was it this morning or yesterday? It was this morning. On the Hill this morning explaining, let's take a listen.
Can you just take people through sort of step by step what happened here? And also, you know, was this over just this one article about Hunter Biden, or was this kind of a broader schism that's been brewing for some time?
It's definitely part of a broader schism that's been brewing for some time, although even in the absence of that, even if things had been perfect, I would never accept somebody telling me that I can't publish my views or perspectives without having other people first agree with what it is that I'm saying. So even if everything had been perfect, I think this probably would have happened anyway. But no, as I detailed, I had a growing dissatisfaction with the direction of the Intercept. And a lot of this, you know, I think people have to understand is the way that I've always written is based in how I began writing, which is I didn't go to Columbia Journalism School and then try and get a job at the New York Times. I opened a blog for free in 2005 and just began expressing my views about what I was seeing in the Bush administration, the war on terror, and then I would hit publish. And that's how I built an audience, was because I was being so free in my expression and candid and about my tone and talking like a real human being. And so I never wanted to enter media outlets. And when they...
So now I want to actually pull up the article. He published it on the Substack. And he said he published it exactly as it was when he presented it to the editors. The real scandal: U.S. media uses falsehoods to defend Joe Biden from Hunter's emails. I have a real problem with that title. What the fuck is he talking about? The New York Post 2 weeks ago, emails Hunter Biden's laptop relating to blah, 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 and subsequent articles. One outcome is that the Biden campaign concluded rationally that there is no need for the front-running president. Yes, they shouldn't address the issue. I don't think so. Rather than condemn Biden for ignoring these questions, the natural instinct of a healthy press when it comes to a presidential election, journalists have instead led the way in concocting excuses to justify its silence. First of all, I want to know where this silence is. It's all I've fucking heard about. It's the thing I keep talking about on my own fucking show. Just 2 or 3 people in a fucking stream. After the Post's first article, both the newspaper and other news outlets have published numerous other emails and texts purportedly written to and from Hunter, reflecting his efforts to induce his father to take actions as vice president beneficial to the Ukrainian energy company Burisma, on whose board of directors Hunter sat for a monthly payment of $50,000, as well as proposals for lucrative business deals in China that traded on his influence with his father's. Now, the writer from the New York Times that broke the story about Burisma is a writer for the Intercept now. And he says that's ass backwards. That Biden tried to get a corrupt prosecutor fired for not investigating companies like Burisma. So here's the article. In the Intercept, James Risen. To see my journalism twisted, perverted, and turned into lies and poisonous propaganda by Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and their enablers. This is in the Intercept. And then Glenn even points out, Glenn is on the level I just, like, he's not going to be throwing bullshit into his stories. But his framing of all this. Now, like, producer Dave had a fantastic tweet about it. They got him banned on Twitter for a little bit. He tweeted it, Glenn, just nail yourself to a fucking cross already. Because Glenn has been questionable in some of the things he's said as of late. But thus far, no proof has been offered by Bobulinski that Biden ever consummated his participation in any of those discussed deals. Wall Street Journal says it found no corporate records reflecting that the deal was finalized. Didn't show Hunter Biden or James Biden discussing a role for Joe Biden in the venture. Glenn is complaining that the media didn't do its due diligence, and then goes on to list the ways that the media did its due diligence. Fox News reported the same thing, the news division, not Tucker Carlson. But here but nobody claimed that any such deals had been consummated, so the conclusion that one had not does not negate the story. What is the story then? I thought the story was that Joe Biden was participating in this corrupt deal and that China had some kind of fucking shit on him that they could use to blackmail him. Beyond that, the Journal's columnist reviewed a stash of documents and found correspondence corroborates and expands on emails recently published by the New York Post, including ones where Hunter was insisting that it was his connection to his father that was the greatest asset sought by the Chinese. I bet. Please, let's have a discussion about nepotism in this country and how we don't live in a meritocracy. We live in an oligarchy where rich people's kids get jobs for no fucking reason. I wonder what Meghan McCain had to say about this. These documents also demonstrate, reported the Times, that the countries that Hunter Biden, James Biden, and their associates plan to target for deals overlapped with nations where Joe Biden had previously been involved as vice president. Isn't that every fucking country? Especially if you're talking about Ukraine and China. In case you guys aren't aware, there was an invasion by Russia into the Ukraine towards the end of the Obama presidency. And China is always in the forefront of international relations. So, the vice president was involved in matters in the Ukraine and China? All of these materials, the authenticity of which has never been disputed by Hunter Biden or the Biden campaign, raise important questions about whether the former vice president and current front-running presidential candidate was aware of his efforts by his son to peddle influence with the vice president for profit. Sure, look into it. Apparently, the FBI is has been investigating it for a year and has come up with nothing yet. So and god damn, I love Glenn, but like, look at all this he wrote about this shit. To say fucking nothing.
Began trying to invite me to go and join those.
But the story has been Glenn Greenwald now.
The same exact editorial freedom where I post directly to the internet without editorial intervention, except in rare cases like the Snowden case or the Brazil reporting, or where it could give rise to legal liability. And this has always been the condition of any place that I went, written into my contract, Salon, The Guardian. And obviously I didn't go and create a new media outlet when I created The Intercept in order to impose greater limits on my own freedom. Nobody would do that, and I didn't either. So I've always had that freedom to publish directly to the internet without anyone intervening, which is why I've been able over the last 4 years to be able, for example, to publish so much stuff.
Now, when he says intervening, you can go, he actually published the emails with his editor. They seem so banal. And like, I agree with the editor. I agree with, and some I agree with and some I disagree with. Overall, I think this piece can work best if it is significantly narrowed down to what you first discussed. Media criticism about liberal journalists not asking Biden questions. There are a couple of published emails and texts in which Hunter Biden or his business partners suggest or hint that Joe Biden might be aware of or involved in their dealings with China. Those passages have gotten the most attention, justifiably, but they are vague. Exactly. Just seems like what an editor should be doing, right? Having a discussion with a journalist about the ethics of the story he's trying to pose. It's unclear whether Joe Biden, even if he is the big guy, was aware of the ownership share. I feel there are substantive problems with the way you present the material on Ukraine. We just went over that. His own colleague at The Intercept disputes what he said. There are many places in the piece where you say that the material raises serious questions about Biden's motives, yet you never present any evidence that supports such questions. Exactly! But that's not evidence he was installed by Biden in order to achieve that end. It appears from the quote Taibbi cites that Biden initially had no idea who Shokin's proposed successor was. And yes, exhaustive GOP-led Senate investigations found no evidence. That's why, if you are going to make these claims, I'm gonna need to see something. Because all the evidence points to the contrary. So let's see what Glenn says back. I don't agree with the sections regarding the serious questions raised by the emails Biden should have to answer are either unnecessary or inaccurate. While I'm willing to talk about any specific factual inaccuracies, of which there were, we pointed it out, I'm not willing to remove those sections. In part because I think that discussion is important in its own right. But what are we discussing here? I believe I was quite careful not to say that the emails prove Biden had a corrupt motive. Correct. You said it and then fucking dance circles around it for fucking paragraphs after. This Hunter Biden story that I wish I hadn't spent the whole show talking about, but goddamn, it's all the right-wingers are coming at me with. Let's get back to Glenn here.
Skepticism about Russiagate, when it was horrifying my colleagues at The Intercept who were on board with Russiagate and knew that it was making their liberal friends angry. It was only because I had that right. So that right is sacrosanct to me, to be able to express my views without having to negotiate the tone I'm using or what it is that I'm saying to appease other people's ideological preferences or their own views of what is correct or incorrect. And that's why I encouraged them. And I said, look,
it's not about views of what is correct.
I totally understand that it's a very debatable issue, then you should actually go and write your own article and say why what I'm saying is wrong, and air that debate, air that dissent, instead
or get on a stream and point it out.
The reality is that the reason they didn't want to do that is because in 2016, The Intercept was one of those publications, like the New York Times, that was blamed for Trump's winning, because we did do a lot of reporting on the Hillary emails, because that was our job as reporters. And they didn't want to spend the next 4 years, if Trump won, having their friends say, oh, look, you did it again. You published.
Well, those friends are stupid. Anyone that blames a media outlet for reporting on news is idiotic. One person and one person only is responsible for Hillary Clinton's loss in 2016, and it's fucking Hillary Clinton and her shitty-ass campaign. Read the book Shattered. Fantastic book. It will tell you all the ways the campaign dropped the ball.
An article about Joe Biden before the election.
The merch link works. Check down in the description. You should be able to click on it.
Or even if Trump lost, saying, oh, look, you were trying to help Trump. That's the reality. They were captive to fears about what people on Twitter would say, what their friends and colleagues would say, and they just didn't want me reporting anything that would reflect on negatively on Joe Biden for that reason.
So, Glenn, the Intercept responded.
Now, I didn't get that from reading the editor's responses.
The narrative Glenn presents about his departure is teeming with distortion and inaccuracies, all of them designed to make him appear as a victim rather than a grown person throwing a tantrum. You published your email correspondence yesterday with those editors over the said censorship of your article there. Could you just lay out the actual accuracies here about and address their response?
Ah, shit.
Sure. I mean, look, you know, in order to explain to the public, including my own readership, why I was leaving the media outlet I created with great fanfare, I obviously had to be honest about my dissatisfactions with it. So I understand that the people who are still at The Intercept need to defend themselves, which means attacking me, and that's fine. But this is not a case where anyone needs to figure out who's telling the truth. I said from the beginning I was going to...
I seriously, like, we just went through it. I don't see how anybody was attacking him.
Publish all of the information in the name of transparency.
That's weird.
That The Intercept has often failed to provide for itself, most notoriously in the Reality Winner case, where to this very day it never has explained to the public why that happened, how it happened, who did that, and I was furious about that. That was one of the main...
If you haven't heard about the Reality Winner case, you really need to look that up. But The Intercept tried to verify the documents with the CIA, or the NSA, I can't remember which one it was, and it actually led them to realize it was Reality Winner and completely outed their own source. So that was a grave mistake by The Intercept.
Fights I had with them, and so I didn't want to be like that, be that way. So I published the correspondence.
It should be like click the expand button. It should be on there. I promise you.
All of it I had with my editors surrounding their attempt to censor my article, and it was
thank you for checking it out.
What they said, which is, we're not going to let you publish this unless you remove all of the sections that talk about Joe Biden and Ukraine and Burisma and Joe Biden and China, and instead just make it a very narrow, much more stripped down version of this article by talking about your media criticisms. And
as a writer, I understand exactly what they're talking about. We just looked at his article. It's how many words was that? 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 words? I mean, Jesus, Glenn.
I said, look, if there's a factual inaccuracy in the article, of course you should. I want you to identify that, but you haven't. But I'm not going to take out the parts
they did
of Joe Biden and just make it a media critique, in part because on principle that's wrong, but also because the media...
I want to know what the critique of Joe Biden is exactly. Just that he doesn't respond to the allegations?
Story here in the first place. And you can just see in the emails that was what they were saying. We're not going to publish this unless the sections about Biden are removed.
So let me ask you this, Glenn.
No, they wanted you to make your article far more concise.
The left weren't sure how
and get to the
handle
fucking
this
point
yesterday for a couple of reasons. Number one, because so many of us had such great, incredible respect for you, but also maybe because the bar has been so lowered. The Intercept has been one of the only left-leaning outlets or independent outlets or sort of mainstream outlets that has covered Biden critically at all. Ryan Grimm obviously broke the initial story about Tara Reade's allegations being suppressed by the Time's Up organization. There's been other critical reporting of Democrats, the uncovering of the Alex Morse smear campaign that went down. So it's sort of like, you know, we see at least some critical and honest reporting coming out there. Can you speak to that part? And then
leftists
also,
have been criticizing Biden hard.
I see a lot of people are frankly acting in bad.
I cannot wait until Biden gets elected and I can go back to bitching about Democrats. Holy fuck. Do I miss ragging on Democrats every day?